Hold up, before you buy that RF lens, hear me out. So recently I sold loads of gear and I wanted to get a lens that was something a bit special, something a bit glamour, something a bit Hollywood. So I was looking at the RF 85mm 1.2. Now that lens is quite expensive. So instead I got this. This is the 85mm EF lens, and this is the version 2 1.2L. And with money I saved, I also got this, the 50mm 1.2L, and this, the 24mm 1.4L, and this, the 135 f2L, all for less than the RF 85mm. I still had money left over. All this to say, maybe you should get some EF glass instead of RF glass. It might be a better investment for your business. But let's take a look as to why that might be the case. So probably the most famous investor in the world, Warren Buffett, was known to say, when people are greedy, be fearful. And when people are fearful, be greedy. But why is that relevant for lenses? Well, RF glass is really sought after right now. It's very expensive. Some of the lenses you have to wait before you can buy. And everybody wants the new stuff, the latest and greatest. There's also a lot of photographers who are selling their old EF glass because they're worried that the value is going to go down as Canon releases new RF versions, and they want to make sure they recoup some of their loss, I suppose, and invest that into newer glass. So this means the market is currently being flooded with loads of EF lenses that are in really good shape, are fantastic quality, and are way cheaper than the RF equivalent. But let's take a look at the RF lenses and why people really want those. Technically, they are superior by certain metrics. They are sharper, they have smoother bokeh, and they have extra features such as IS, where the EF version didn't have that. But even the thing that makes the RF glass that much more technically superior can also be its downfall, because while what's in the plane of focus is super sharp and the fall off is almost instantaneous to give you that really smooth bokeh, it ends up looking quite flat. So more like iPhone portrait mode than the older glass. And that's not exactly a look that a lot of people are after from their professional photography. On top of this, the RF glass relies a lot on software correction. So in-camera corrections to the distortion, to the vignetting, to chromatic aberration. And when you shoot a lot of these lenses in RAW, you see exactly how bad the distortion is, and that needs to be corrected. So you are losing a lot of resolution when you fix it in software or in camera. A lot of people are just like, well, that's just the way things are now. We have to deal with software being the solution. However, back in the day, that wasn't the case. The cameras couldn't do this in camera, and as a result, the lens manufacturers had to optically correct in the lens. But if you look at the EF glass, particularly this one, it's a great example, the 50mm 1.2. Now, technically, it's not the best lens in the world. Yeah, it's sharp, even wide open in the center of the frame, but it's not so much in the corners. However, when you talk to a lot of photographers who own this lens, and a lot of whom have got rid of it, they miss it and they love it. And there's a certain thing about it that makes this lens special, and that is something that a lot of the RF glass is missing. That is character. This is where those technical imperfections give something to the image, and somehow it makes it feel more organic and more interesting. And this is something Fuji leaned into a lot with their early XF lenses, like the 35mm 1.4. They sold it on having character and having something interesting about it, where it wasn't technically superior to other lenses. This is where you will get nostalgic over a look a lens gave you. Something that's very weird is that you look back in these photos and you go, there was something special about that. And I think that's something that's missing from the new RF glass. It's so technically perfect that it's easily replaceable and not that special, whereas something that has imperfections ends up being perfect. There's something these EF lenses have that the RF glass is just missing, and that is soul. Because the RF glass is corrected in software, it ends up losing character. And because it's so technically perfect, being super sharp with amazingly smooth bokeh, again, it ends up losing character. These EF glasses, particularly this 50mm 1.2, ooze character. It's sharp in the center, wide open. It's softer in the corners and has amazing bokeh that's not perfect. And it also has loka, which, I mean, technically isn't ideal. Character isn't about perfection. It's about those little quirks or imperfections that make something special, give it a bit of magic. Like the beauty spot on Marilyn Monroe, or quirky lines on a Turner. It's imperfect, yet undeniably beautiful. So I went into my local camera shop, which is Wilkinson's in Kendal, and they let me check out the RF 85mm 1.2 and compare it against the EF 85mm 1.2. I really appreciate them letting me test it out, have a go, and see what it was like next to this with the adapter on it. What I found was the 85 RF lens was gigantic. It felt so big in the hand, it felt really big on the front of the camera. But then again, so did the EF version with the adapter mounted on it. And what ended up being the case was they both felt quite heavy and quite large on the front of the camera. The RF glass felt a bit more balanced because the adapter pushes the lens further out from the camera, so it ends up feeling quite front heavy. I do prefer the look of the EF lens adapted though, because it's got this kind of steampunk look to it that I really like. And comparing the way they work, while the RF glass focuses faster, it's not way faster, which I was quite surprised by. The 85mm focuses quite slowly, but surely. Because there's such a narrow depth of field, it has to focus quite slowly to make sure that it gets focus immediately as soon as it's locked on. It's the same with the 85 RF in that because it's such a shallow depth of field, it can't focus super fast or it would be constantly hunting. Instead, it focuses smoothly towards the plane of focus and stops as soon as it catches critical focus. So both aren't fast focusing lenses, but the RF version definitely was faster. So as well as being faster to focus, it's also weather sealed, which is definitely a bonus. And for people living in places like the Lake District, it's very useful. However, a lot of the EF glass is also weather sealed, just not this 85 1.2. And even a lot of cinematographers at the moment are looking at lenses with more character. So a lot of Helios lenses are being repackaged into cinema bodies, and that's how they shot Dune, I think, or Dune 2, using old Russian lenses that are full of character and still razor sharp, but not technically perfect. It adds some interest, it makes something feel more, I don't know, more special. And even Canon recognizes this. It's rumored that they're releasing a 45mm 1.2 STM lens, which isn't going to be an L lens. However, they say it's going to be optically the same as this lens. So it's kind of a quiet admission that technical perfection isn't everything. The main question that I would always have when choosing between two different lenses is, would I notice a difference from what I shoot between the two? And yeah, if we compare a shot from the RF next to the EF version, the RF is going to look superior, but you're not delivering client work one image next to the other and going, you know, which one's sharper. What you're doing is you're sending in a completed package to the best of your abilities. What I think is even more important is the final look of the product you create when you deliver to the client or when you post it online. And is this something that you will notice, or your client will notice, or your audience will notice that it's not shot on the latest RF glass? Or would they just look at what you've created and think it looks stunning because you're still using something that is quite special? So here's some shots I took with the 85 EF 1.2L lens. So what's the conclusion to all this? Yeah, the RF glass is technically superior. But that's never the end of it with photography. The EF lenses are proven performers because they were what we used professionally for a very long time, and they were more than enough for high-end client work. On top of this, they have incredible character that the new RF lenses just seem to be missing. And a very important factor, they are much cheaper, especially when you buy them secondhand. These EF lenses can be just as inspiring, if not more so, than the RF equivalents. So before you get swept up in the hype of the latest RF lens because you've watched a YouTube video on it, which is something I fall into quite a lot, yeah, maybe check out some secondhand EF glass at your local camera store, because a lot of them are stocking used EF lenses and they're in great condition for a really good price. And if you do own any EF glass that you think is a little bit special and you're hanging on to and want to tell the world about, say it in the comments. Let us know what EF lens you have that is special that we should probably check out. I'm going to try and do videos on each of these EF lenses and also the 100mm f2 that I recently picked up. So keep an eye out for those. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter which you choose, whether it's the technical perfection of the RF lenses or the soulful character of the EF lenses. What matters is that you're creating something that moves you and the people who view it. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you swinging by, and hopefully I shall catch you soon in the next one. Take care.